Hello and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap here on WRICNow.com, on our Facebook page, our YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition. Of course, we had last week off because of the election, but we're back into the full swing of things now. Since the last time we talked to you guys, basketball season has started. I've seen the Richmond Spiders at home. I've seen VCU at home. And, of course, Virginia Tech and Virginia have been making headlines as well. We got a lot to get to, a packed show because crossover season is here. Basketball, football is all in the in the middle of all of this now. We got two sports going on at the same time. It's a busy time, but a fun time to be a sports fan here in Central Virginia. And let's go ahead and get started with probably the biggest storyline of the week, and that was the fact that UVA took down Pittsburgh on the road. Here, fix my camera a little bit. At Pittsburgh, a place that they have not had a lot of success ever since Pittsburgh joined the league. Virginia has struggled to go on the road. A lot of teams struggle to play well at Pittsburgh. I know Virginia Tech has had those issues. But UVA goes on the road when they were lower than they had been in a long, long time. And you almost write off the season for UVA, and they prove everybody wrong. You know, they had that just embarrassing loss, really, I'll say it, to UNC, where they lost at home in front of their best crowd they've had in a long time. To 41-14, and they had a bye week off. And head coach Tony Elliott talked about how the loss was on him, and he's got to be better, and this and that. And you almost wrote off the season for Virginia. They had to go at Pittsburgh. They have to play at Notre Dame. They have to play SMU. They have to go to Lane Stadium. It wasn't looking good, and then they turn around and put together probably their best performance of the season, and they knocked off a top 20 Pittsburgh team, 24-19. They got Pittsburgh after what I guess probably was an emotional loss for the Panthers after they lost to SMU the week prior, but give credit where it's due. What a win for UVA. Calandria, 16 for 24. Didn't play great, threw 2 picks in the game, but what UVA did was they ground and pound their way to a win. 3 different guys carry the ball for over 10 times in this game. The Cavaliers went into this game with clearly the idea that they were going to be a force on the ground in between the tackles. They dominated the time of possession, 35 minutes to 24 minutes. It was a perfect formula to win a game against a team that probably has a little deeper roster than you have, right? And the Cavaliers go on the road and they get a big win. It was really impressive. I have some highlights from you as well that I'll play while we talk about the success of the Cavs. There it is. Let's get back to the front here. There we are. Cavs on the road. Just really impressive stuff from UVA to go on the road. And all of a sudden, there's new life for this team, right? Tony Elliott had only won one top 25 game. That was last year when they kind of shocked UNC on the road. And then they come into this year, and it's almost like the fan base had given up after that loss to UNC. They had the hot start, and then they lost a couple of games in the middle of the season. And then they go on the road, and they put together a great performance. This is after the loss to Clemson, after a loss to Louisville, after a loss to UNC. They had lost 3 straight games. It looked like we gotta think about maybe firing Tony Elliott, is what you see online. And now they have an opportunity to make a bowl game. After the previous 2 seasons, they've only won 3 games. And just like that, 1 win, that's the difference between how your fan base and how fans and how the nation, kind of looks at your program and the success that your program has been able to have, is whether or not you can go on the road and win big games. And that's what Tony Elliott does this season. They now have 5 wins on the year. They have a chance to get bowl eligible. That's not out of the cards at all. They have to go to Notre Dame this week, which of course is, the big, scary thing in the room with us, is that they have to go play a non-conference game after such a big game. And, let's be honest, that's probably not going to go great for the Cavs. They're 0-4 all-time against Notre Dame. This will just be their 2nd time ever playing at South Bend. I got the pleasure to go up there when I was a student to watch a game, and that place is just so special. It's going to be I highly recommend any Cavalier fans, if you're on the fence about whether or not you want to go to South Bend and watch a game, it is so worth it. It really does feel like you're at walking, through the halls of what college football passed, and the glory of it all, and the honor that it surrounds that program. It's a special place to watch a football game, especially in late November. It should be a great atmosphere. Virginia, let's be honest, they're going to struggle in that game. I'm looking more forward to seeing what they can do against SMU probably in 2 weeks, and then of course if they can knock off Virginia Tech, something that the Cavaliers have only been able to do once in the past 2 decades. So a lot of upside for UVA. I think when you look at the stats, what the picture really paints is that, they clearly went into the bye week. They clearly decided, hey, we need to learn how to run the football. We have to be better. That's something they were not able to do against UNC. They really struggled to move the ball on the ground, and at times they did it when they were down in that game last week. They struggled coming out of halftime. That wasn't a problem against Pittsburgh this week. They come out of halftime. They score 2 third-quarter touchdowns, and they survive. They get some defensive stops, and it was really impressive from the Cavaliers. I don't want to stay on it too long because really the stats almost don't even paint a picture of the game. I think the game plan for UVA, which is impressive, I'm really impressed that Tony Elliott goes into the bye week, took that loss to UNC on his shoulders, said it was my fault, we're going to take the bye week to get better, and that's what they do. They go on the road, and they get a win over a top 25 Pittsburgh team. Big congratulations to Tony Elliott. Winning that game probably takes him off of the hot seat for the summer, even if he does go 0-3 in these last 3 games. 5 wins now. That's 2 more wins than he had last year. That's 2 more wins than he had the year before. Tony Elliott clearly is building something in Charlottesville, and I think something that's not being talked about enough is that he's recruiting really well in-state guys and getting guys with size, and he's doing it with guys that maybe aren't 4 and 5 stars, but he's building a core group of guys, and when you have guys from the area, they're probably less likely to transfer somewhere else. They're going to probably be happy playing closer to home. And so I'm excited to see what the Cavaliers can do in these last 3 games, that they can get bowl eligible. I think that's a huge success for a Cavaliers team who, coming into the season, that was probably the upside. That was probably, where you expected or wanted the team to be after a 3-win season at 6-6. And I think they have an opportunity to do it. Again, they go to Notre Dame this week. That's not going to be easy. I think most people are more looking forward to Notre Dame playing Army in 2 weeks. And then, of course, SMU comes to Charlottesville, and then they go on the road to Lane Stadium to end the year. All right, well, following that win, this is what head coach Tony Elliott had to say following the big win over Pittsburgh on the road.
Like a ton of just emotion. To me, it's another game. It was great to see people before the game, but as I told the guys last night, my job is to stay focused, to focus on being the best version of myself so that I can help this football team, and unfortunately I got to do a better job because I didn't quite have them ready to go execute at a high level today. So it's nice to see people, but for me, the objective was to come down here and try to find a way to win a football game, and unfortunately we weren't able to get that done.
I apologize for that. That was UVA sound from last week's win. I must have got that mixed up on my desktop. Essentially, he was excited about the team getting a big win at Pittsburgh. Sorry about the soundbite. All right, let's turn our attention now to Virginia Tech, because we kind of got to shift things 360 here, or 180, I guess would be the correct saying, because the Hokies couldn't be in a more different spot than UVA. But the fact of the matter is they both have 5 wins on the year. So it's, the 2 sides of every coin, right? Virginia Tech hosted Clemson in what was probably the most hyped game coming into the season. Following the Virginia Tech loss to Syracuse on the road. This game not quite as hyped, especially across national media. I know some of the talking heads from across college football mentioned that this was the disappointment bowl with Clemson losing the week prior, Virginia Tech losing the week prior, whereas if Virginia Tech had beaten Syracuse and Clemson won, we were going to be talking about maybe a game to get into the ACC championship. But with Virginia Tech losing to Clemson, this game completely flips upside down. And I have a lot of thoughts about this game, and I'll try not to be too long-winded. But the Hokies fall 24-14. They have 1 touchdown late in the game that was kind of in garbage time, if you will. That was thrown by Colin Schlee. The Hokies really, I don't think they have an identity at quarterback right now. Kyron Drones struggled. I think he is banged up. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. 9 for 20. Only was able to throw for 115 yards through an interception. Colin Schlee gets into the game. He struggled to throw the ball. Of course, he's first-year player for Virginia Tech, but he's a redshirt senior transfer in from UCLA. Did throw the lone touchdown pass to put the offense on the board at least. But I think the biggest takeaway from this game, and what I had some conversations with some friends of mine that are closely to the Virginia Tech program, and Virginia Tech only carried the ball 4 times on Saturday by a running back. They went the entire game and only had 4 rushes by a running back. Colin Schlee ran the ball 5 times, obviously there for 28 yards. Kyron Drones obviously had his rushing attempts. Let's give you the exact number for Kyron Drones. Drones carried the ball 11 times. But in terms of running backs, now I'm well aware that Bashal Tootin was injured. He was banged up a little bit. But to only run the ball 4 times against Clemson, who had struggled to stop the run a week prior, it kind of blows my mind. I mean, obviously a lot of these carries for Schlee and Drones were indeed designed quarterback runs to kind of make up for the fact that Tootin was injured and Malachi Thomas, I think, was injured for the game as well. But there's still some guys on this depth chart that you've recruited that obviously have skill that we've seen flashes of here in there. Coney, for example, getting some carries at running back. Your running back only rushed the ball 4 times, and you're dominated by the line of scrimmage. You couldn't get any third downs because every third down opportunity for Virginia Tech this past week was 3rd and long. So they had to throw the ball, and obviously the Hokie quarterbacks weren't very accurate. 9 for 20, 7 for 17. I mean, they struggled to get in position to give them an opportunity to do better than 2 for 14 on 3rd down because they couldn't run the ball. 4 rushes by a running back for the entire game. All of those coming from an injured Tootin. Just kind of blows my mind. On the other flip side of the coin here, Phil Maffa for Clemson rushed 26 times, and he wasn't carrying the ball 5 and 6 yards every time he had it. The Virginia Tech defense, I thought, played really well in this game. They gave the Virginia Tech offense just about everything they could in terms of giving them an opportunity to win a game. Multiple interceptions, multiple sacks, multiple times they had Clemson in 3rd and long opportunities. You think back to the one play that Clay Klubnik got out of that big sack and threw a touchdown pass. You sack him there. That's 4th and long. You're punting again. I think the defense for Virginia Tech played really well. The offense just uninspired play. I was very surprised to see that. Obviously, Clemson is a top program in the country. They have unbelievable talent. Their 3rd strings are probably were more highly recruited than some of Virginia Tech starters. You enter this game as an underdog. You're not supposed to win it, but the effort that was put out by the offense, I think, was flat out uninspired and surprising, to say the least, to see Virginia Tech come out and really struggle to do anything against Clemson. And now the shift changes completely. We're talking about 2 weeks ago, Virginia Tech off of that win versus Georgia Tech, where the offense exploded. The defense played great. Antoine Powell-Ryland, the sack leader in the country. And you lose to a disappointing game that you kind of threw away against Syracuse that we didn't get to talk about last week. Because we were off. And then you come home and host Clemson. And, Virginia Tech kind of has that, the trend's not the right word, but they have that thing around their program where they can't win the big game, right? That's what everyone says. And you have an opportunity to play a Clemson team that's, a little banged up. They were without some of their starters on defense. And it was an offensive performance that, granted, were there injured players on the team? Yes. Granted, is there still talent on that team? Despite that, yes. But and to come out and only have 4 running back carries in an entire game is mind-blowing to me, especially because it really was a pretty close game to where if the Hokies just score and get a stop and then score, they were in the game until the 4th quarter. And now they have an opportunity to do what maybe Tony Elliott did, and off of an embarrassing performance, go into a bye week and you come out and play a Duke team that is not, Duke of old age. This Duke Blue Devils team is really talented this year. They've gotten some big wins. They should have beaten SMU. A blocked field goal is the reason they lose that game. They looked good versus Miami. They, of course, took down NC State last week. They beat UNC. I mean, they have some great wins on their roster. They beat Northwestern, an out-of-conference team, earlier this season as well. So maybe Virginia Tech has a chance to kind of look in the mirror and say, hey, maybe this isn't the season that everyone expected us to have, that we expected us to have. Let's go into the bye week and you tell your team to put your egos aside and go to work and run the ball against Duke, and see if they can kind of turn this season around. last year, obviously, Virginia Tech finishes the year 6-6, the regular season 6-6. I think if you finish your regular season 7-5, you go to a bowl game and win that, you finish 8-5. I think fans are looking back at this season and saying, you know what, Virginia Tech is still building something. Brent Pry, year 1, 3 wins. Last year, 7 wins. If you finish with 8 this year, things are still going in the right direction. I don't think it's a completely, fire everybody situation like I've seen online over the past, couple of weeks, especially after the Syracuse loss. People are talking about firing this. We got to kick these guys out of here. This is Brent Pry's first year as a head coach. First tenure, I should say, as a head coach. He had not previously been a head coach of any program, and he was the defense coordinator at Penn State. I think his lack of experience as being a head coach shows with his time management, with the way Virginia Tech has come out of halftime a couple of times this season, with slow starts that they've had. It looks like an inexperienced coaching staff, and it's a first tenured defensive coordinator. It's a first tenured offensive coordinator. I think at times it looks like this team has an inexperienced coaching staff, and they do need some more time. They do need a couple of more off seasons. Look at what Florida did. They fired their coach. They hired somebody. They're ready to fire him again. Look at what Auburn's done. They've brought in a guy, fired him, brought in Hugh Freeze. They're ready to fire him again. I don't think Virginia Tech needs to be in a situation of where they're trying to buy people out when they don't have the money to, and then you're getting stuck with, guys that have not had success yet. They took a chance on a guy that had not been a head coach. I think Virginia Tech still kind of headed in the right direction. I'd like to see recruiting get a little better. Jets Fuente recruiting classes have outshined Brent Pry so far. So I'm not in the camp to that they need to blow things up in Blacksburg by any means. But I will say that it was a pretty uninspired performance against Clemson, and Virginia Tech still has an opportunity to end the year on a high note, kind of like they did last year, where at the end of the year they looked really good, and then they dominated in a bowl game, and then you have a whole season of expectations and excitement, or off season of expectations and excitement, and they have an opportunity to do that again with the win over a Duke team that's not horrible, and then of course your bitter rivals in UVA, who's on the upswing. So we'll be interested to see how that goes as well. Moving our attention now over to the FCS football real quick, because how do you not mention it? The Spiders win their 8th straight game, this time over Campbell, 27-24. It took a last-second field goal from Brandon Peskin to get it done. They had to come behind in this game. That's something we hadn't seen from the Spiders this season. The past 3 weeks, the Spiders had scored all of their points. It might have been the past 2 weeks, or the majority of their points in the first half, and then they've kind of held on to leads. This time, they had to go on the road, and they were tested with something new. They were down. They struggled in this game, and they were able to, pin their ears back and come from behind and get a big victory. And inspired a great game from the Spiders to win their 8th straight. This week, they go on the road to Hampton to play a Hampton Pirates team that has really struggled this year. They almost lost to Virginia State early on in this year. I was going to pull up the record for you, but it's not working for me. That's fine. Spiders on the road at Hampton, looking for their 9th straight. And then, of course, the big one after they play Hampton, William & Mary at home. I know there's a lot of excitement around that game, and the Spiders are in sole possession of first place in the CAA, and they're looking at maybe another conference championship underneath head coach Russ Huseman. Got to give them the spotlight because they deserve it. All right, let's go to VCU now. They begin their season at 2-0. They dominated Boston College on the road by 25 points, 80-55. This was a neutral site game. It was kind of cool for VCU. They actually went on the road to play at the Naval Academy in what was the Veterans Classic. There was 4 teams that went and participated in this, and they kind of go under their same regiment that the Naval Academy does, where they wake up at a certain time. They went through some drills, and they had meetings at 7 a.m. And so it was a whole experience. And head coach Ryan Odom said that his team at Utah State had done it as well. So when the opportunity presented itself, he was all about it. And the team looked ready for it as well. Philip Russell gets 20 points. Bamasil gets 18 in that win against Boston College. I mean, this VCU team and their first win on Monday over Bellarmine, they did it from the 3-point line. They shot like 55%. This past week against Boston College, they they shot below 40% in the game, and they were still able to get a 25-point win over an ACC opponent. They're receiving votes in the top 25. I would not be surprised if by the time A-10 play begins, the VCU Rams are, in the top 25. They got a big game against Seton Hall coming up here soon, and if they can manage that one at the Stew, that would be pretty impressive as well. They will be in action tomorrow against Merrimack. Merrimack, they've started their year 1-0. They got a win over Vermont. They blew them out, to be quite frank with you. And today Ryan Odom actually talked about that as well. That to beat a Merrimack team is. Let's see if I can get through my videos here. There it is. To beat Merrimack beat Vermont, and of course he was on that. He was the head coach of the UMBC team that beat UVA in the NCAA tournament a few years ago, and so he was very familiar with playing Vermont, Vermont in the same conference. And he said if you can beat Vermont by that much, you got a good team. And so he's well aware of the task at hand that's coming into the Stew tomorrow night. Of course, I'll be there for full coverage of the Rams showdown against the Warriors of Merrimack, I believe their nickname is. It was awesome experience at VCU at the Siegel Center. I had not been to a game at the Siegel Center, and the place was electric. Joe Bamasil was all over the place, dunking the ball. Had a great quote after the game, breaking down those plays. I posted on my Twitter. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But the place was rocking. It's loud in there, and it's exactly what I was expecting to see with VCU basketball. And since we're talking VCU basketball, when I bring in my producer for today's show, that is not my producer for today's show. Got some things mixed up here today. Take 1 week off, guys, and all of a sudden things aren't looking great. Here we go. I got him in here now. There you go, Will. How's it going?
Good, Nolan. How you doing?
Great to have you, Will. Were you able to catch the VCU basketball game?
Unfortunately, I did not, but it's definitely been exciting to see them start the season so well. The early games, I think, I don't know if it's too early to talk about conference tournaments and NCAA tournaments, but I think VCU and U of R are showing that Virginia continues to run the A-10 basketball scene, and nothing different for this season.
Yeah, well, you can say that against VCU. They looked great in this game against Bellarmine. Due to the technical difficulties, I think I am going to have to take Will off screen here, but we will. Feel free to chime in, Will. We can hear you loud and clear. But VCU looked great. The Siegel Center was awesome. Max Schulga, obviously one of the best returners in the conference, got 19 points on night one. They kind of shut them down against their second game against Boston College, but this team is so deep. They're playing freshmen. They're looking good, and the Rams were still able to run away with things following that. Richmond Spiders, they do fall in their home opener their second game of the year. The Spiders fall after they beat Mount Olive to begin their season. They dropped a game in their second game on Saturday night. I was there. We had the highlights to a red-hot Marist team. Marist, I believe, rather. 79-72. Marist just shot the lights out in that game, and it was quite the surprise to see the Spiders go down as they did because they had so much success last year. We knew that they only returned one starter, but that was the same case last year. And the Spiders kind of had a slow start to last year's season. They picked it up. It'll be interesting to see if that's the same case. As for the Rams, as mentioned, they will host Loyola, Maryland on Saturday, and then on Wednesday, they will host Merrimack. We got a busy Saturday as well coming up. The CIAA Championship takes place in Salem. That's Virginia State, Virginia Union. It's a rematch of this past Saturday. I made it out to Virginia State on Saturday to watch the Trojans knock off Union, and what I think was kind of a surprise because Union had dominated just about everybody. They were on a 6-game winning streak going into the game, and Virginia State gets it done at home, and it was a magical scene over there at Virginia State as well. The game started, and State needed to beat Union to try to get into the CIAA Championship, but they also needed Johnson E. Smith to lose to Livingston, which I don't think anyone thought was even possible. And sure enough, Livingston upset Johnson E. Smith in the fourth quarter. It's announced over the loudspeaker. And so all of a sudden the Trojans know that if they win this game, they're going to get into the CIAA championship. And sure enough, it's the rematch of last Saturday's game, Virginia Union, Virginia State at the Stag Bowl for the CIAA championship in Salem. So much on the line in this game. These two schools have not faced off in the postseason since pre-1950. So there's a lot of history here and a lot of excitement for that CIAA championship game. Definitely got to keep an eye out for that one, and we'll have full coverage on WRIC.com as hopefully we'll make the trip out to Maryland. Still waiting on credentials and whatnot for that. But some exciting stuff taking place across Central Virginia. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's edition of 8 Sports Nightcap. A couple of technical difficulties. We had moved some stuff around, so apologize for that. But the fact of the matter is we still got a lot of stuff going on. Crossover season's just getting started. 3 weeks left in the regular season for college football. And, of course, basketball has picked up across the state. The Cavaliers and the Hokies, they're undefeated. I think JMU plays tonight at home. And, of course, the Richmond Spider women are in action as we speak as well. But that's going to wrap things up for another edition of 8 Sports Nightcap. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week and throughout the year here on Tuesday nights at 6:45. Thanks so much, and we'll see you tonight at 11 o'clock. Good night, everybody.